So I know that lots of you know about Agile, you know about the manifesto, and you probably know about the different frameworks, but not everyone does. So for those of you that do not, I want to begin to introduce you to the world of Scrum, because Scrum is an Agile oriented framework, and you are likely to get questions that touch on Scrum. So I'm going to touch on Scrum before we close today. Okay. So, what is Scrum? Scrum is a way that we solve problems, complex problems. It is a very simple way of solving problems. It's a framework that allows you to bring in additional things, but at the same time, we are careful to not mindlessly cut stuff out of Scrum. We want to leave it intact for it to truly be Scrum. Now, there are a lot of Scrum and Agile zealots who like arguing this point. I don't like belaboring the point. The bottom line is keep it 100. If you want to add. Don't take out, because it will not be Scrum any longer. And that's okay. You can have a hybrid approach, but don't sacrifice things in Scrum mindlessly. The people who argue, well, we shouldn't have this event. Don't listen to those people for your exam. That's all I'll say. Don't listen to them. So, how does it start? In this idea, we can see a group of stakeholders gathered around an individual. That individual is called a product owner. The product owner is that role who understands the stakeholders. You can also see the product owner is sitting on a bunch of money. Why is that? Because a product owner is referred to in Agile circles as the chief value officer. Think about it. The product owner knows what is valuable and ensures that only those things are done. All right, let's move on. So, the product owner collects all of these requests that the stakeholders have and puts it into a product backlog. You get it? Backlog. It's a log of things that are possibly going to be done. Doesn't mean they are all going to be done. Some of these might be out of scope. Yes, even in Agile, we have things that are out of scope. So we have a product backlog, and this is all of the stuff the customers want. Then we have an event called sprint planning. In sprint planning, we decide which of these things in the backlog are we going to do in the sprint, and we get a sprint backlog. The sprint backlog is a subset of the product backlog. Okay, we get the sprint backlog, and then we begin to do. Now, be aware that the moment you are doing sprint planning, you're already in the sprint, because the sprint is like this. Let me show you real quick. The sprint in the world of Scrum is a container for all the other events. All the other events happen within the sprint. So if this is the sprint, you have sprint planning, which we've talked about. You also have the daily Scrum, which I'm about to show you over here, the daily Scrum. And the daily Scrum is a daily event. Duh, it says daily. It's a daily event. It's funny because some people say, well, we have a daily Scrum weekly. No, that's not a daily Scrum. Yeah, that's not Scrum, right? So it's daily. We also have what we call a sprint review and a sprint retrospective. And that's all the 5 of them. So I'm going to show you how the others come in. So now you know about sprint planning and the sprint backlog, and you know what a sprint is. It's an iteration. So the iteration is a time box within which everything else fits. And like I said, we have a daily Scrum, and this is where the team syncs up to plan for the day ahead. And it is very helpful to know what your colleagues who are developers have completed, because maybe it frees you to work on something, or it prompts you to work on something. One of the things we don't want to do in the daily Scrum is use this as a status meeting. We also don't want to go down the rabbit trail of trying to solve problems in the daily Scrum. So keep that in mind. We uncover problems, we uncover impediments, obstacles, blockers. We uncover these things, but we want to make sure that they are taken care of after the meeting, not in the meeting. Impediments impede you and slow you down. Obstacles are in the way, and it takes time and effort going around them or going over them. And then we have blockers, which is dead in the water. You're just stopped. You can't move. So all these three, they're all things that should be worked on, but hopefully before it gets so severe that you can't move, you've already started seeing the train coming. The moment you see, even before impediments, you should be able to see a risk coming, right? Sometimes you don't, but when you do, you should go after that risk and prevent it from becoming an impediment as much as possible. And then if you don't, the impediment festers and becomes worse. It could become an obstacle. Then it becomes a full-on blocker. You don't want that to happen. And that's why these meetings are important. These events are important, right? So to the resistance that don't like meeting daily, I don't know what to say to you. I don't know what to say. I got some people who don't like the events. Anyway, let me move on. Let me move on. All right. The next thing that I want to bring to your attention is PMI's mention of the backlog refinement event. It is not a formal event in the Scrum Guide, which is the go-to book for Scrum, but it is something that should be done. It is mentioned as one of the responsibilities of the product owner. Whether we do it in a backlog refinement event or whether we do it elsewhere, it should be done. Otherwise, you could be in trouble in your sprint planning. You come into sprint planning, you haven't done any backlog refinement, you're trying to break things down. It's going to be laborious and take too long. All right, let's move on. So the final thing here on this screen is an increment, right? You get the increment out. The increment means potentially shippable increment. And this just means that you get something that you could ship if you needed to, and it meets the definition of done. Your increment is out. The next thing that we talk about is a sprint review event. And this is where your stakeholders, as you can see there, they're gathered around taking a look at the increment and, critiquing the increment and giving you ideas of what you may do better, what you may do in the next sprint, and things such as that. All right, we got a chat from our friend here in Italy, and our friend says, I have not booked the exam yet. I would like to take it in November. I'm looking for resources. Oh, on business analysis. Oh, CAPM. On the CAPM. So you're taking the CAPM, I see. With that said, for the CAPM, you know that I do have a book on the CAPM exam, and it's a very robust book. In fact, I'll show it to you here. I would highly recommend this book. This is going outside of PMP, but because you mentioned business analysis, I wanted to add value to you and let you know that we got a book available. You can't really see it very well, but it's called the CAPM Masterclass. The imagery has gone funny because it's kind of green, but it's called the CAPM Exam Masterclass. It's about almost 500 plus pages. You can actually get that book on our site. I may have to look for that and send that to you. But if you want to take a good CAPM training course, I would recommend going to tinyurl.com/elite CAPM, elite CAPM, and you'll be able to join me for that because I train the CAPM exam as well. Thank you for letting me know that. Yeah, tinyurl.com/elite CAPM. All right, so the final thing that happens in Scrum is the sprint retrospective, and this is where the team looks in the rearview mirror, what went well, what didn't, what can we improve on, and you can actually get a couple or more depending on improvement points. This is not mandatory, but people are encouraged to think Kaizen, So you're always looking for how can I improve, what can I do, such and such. All right, and these are really big concepts for your PMP.